Following the first two parts of Hofstede's cultural dimension, in this episode we are going to talk about the third dimension, masculinity and femininity. Here, masculinity and femininity are societal traits rather than individualistic traits, and arguably this dimension is the most debatable one amongst 6 of them. Let me explain why it is debatable. Masculinity and femininity refer to the distribution of the societal values between the genders, which is a fundamental issue of a society. Here, the masculinity and femininity are used as tokens to convey the stereotypes that we have for both of them. As we already discussed in the first episode of this series, this study was conducted in 1980s. By then, the gender stereotypes were stronger than today. This is why this dimension is highly debated, mainly for a couple of reasons. Firstly, for using the stereotypes as the tokens to explain culture's competitiveness or assertiveness. Secondly, besides cultural inclination, any country's competitiveness depends on their economy, and the assertiveness is derived from their confidence on their forces. Even though this kind of stereotypes put the modern societies in uncomfortable situations, however, this kind of stereotypes are still true to some extent. We take an example of a popular e-commerce website, Nykaa, which is a makeup e-commerce website for women. As we could see, the dominant color on the website is pink, the color which is largely associated with women, in order to show femininity. As I was telling you, this kind of stereotypes are still relevant in modern day businesses. In contrast, we can see a website of a main makeup brand, Warpaint for Men, where the dominant color is black, which is supposed to be regarded as a unisex color. Now, let's define the masculine and feminine societies. Masculinity stands for a society in which the social gender roles are clearly distinct. In these societies, men are supposed to be assertive, tough, and focused on their material success, whereas the women are supposed to be modest, tender, and concerned about the quality of their family life. So, in effect, masculinity is seen to be the trait which emphasizes ambition, acquisition of wealth, and differentiated gender roles. On other hand, femininity is seen to be a trait which is all about caring and nurturing behaviors, lays emphasis on sexual equality, environmental awareness, and more fluid gender roles. So we would say a national culture is largely masculine if certain countries' overall representation is assertive and competitive, which are the stereotypes of men. And we would say a national culture is largely feminine if a certain country's overall representation is being modest and caring, which are stereotypes for women. We should also clarify here that if in a certain country the overall cultural inclination is towards masculinity, that means the traits of the population, including men, women, and other genders of that country, show the same traits. It's also true for feminine cultures, where the overall inclination of the entire population show the feminine traits. Femininity stands for a society where the social gender roles overlap. Both men and women are supposed to be modest, tender, and concerned about the quality of their life. We have already understood the definitions of these two societies. Now let's have a look on the behavioral patterns of the population of these two societies under a few categories. So the first category is the social norms. A masculine society tend to be ego-oriented, whereas the feminine society likely to be relationship-oriented. Masculine society attaches high importance to the money, whereas the feminine society attaches high importance to the quality of life. In masculine society, the perspective is live to work. On other hand, the perspective from the feminine society is work in order to live. In relation to politics and economics, masculine societies prioritize the economic growth, whereas the feminine societies likely to prioritize the environmental protection. In case of conflict, a masculine society tend to use force, whereas a feminine society encourages negotiations to solve a conflict. In relation to religion, religion, masculine societies attach high importance to religion in their life than the feminine societies. In masculine societies, only men can be priests, whereas in feminine society, men and women both can be the priests. In relation to work, larger gender wage gap is visible in masculine societies, whereas in feminine societies, the gap is narrower. In masculine societies, there are very few women in the management. In feminine societies, we see more women in the management. In masculine societies, the employees prefer higher pays, whereas in feminine societies, the employees prefer fewer working hours. In relation to family and school, in masculine societies, traditional family structure is very prominent, whereas in feminine societies, the family structure is quite flexible. In masculine societies, it is taught that girls cry, boys don't. Boys fight, girls don't. In feminine societies, it is taught that both boys and girls cry, neither fight. In masculine societies, failing is considered as a disaster, whereas in feminine societies, failing is regarded as just an accident. Now we have a fair amount of knowledge about the behavioral traits of both of the societies. Now let's have a look where we could see feminine societies and masculine societies. In Hofstede's Masculinity versus Femininity Index, scores are presented for 76 countries. Masculinity is high in Japan, in German-speaking countries, and in some Latin countries such as Italy and Switzerland. It is moderately high in English-speaking Western countries such as UK and Ireland. Moreover, Mexico in Central America shows high percentage of masculine traits. It is low in Nordic countries and in the Netherlands, and moderately low in countries like France, Spain, Portugal, Chile, and Thailand. Now let's have a look at an example. We talked about in masculine societies the gender wage gap is larger than that of the feminine societies. Here we see the percentage difference in full-time earnings between men and women in these countries. As we see in Japan, in Germany, the wage gap between men and women are quite wider than others. Italy is being an exception. As we saw, the masculinity score in Italy is higher than France. However, in terms of the gender wage gap, it shows a lower percentage of difference between men and women. The second example is of countries' economic competitiveness. Here are the countries' world's most competitive economies, where we see Singapore, United States, Japan, Germany, United Kingdom top the list, which are also masculine cultures. But we could also see some exceptions. We could also see some feminine cultures are also there in the list. As we said in the beginning, this cultural dimension is highly debatable while being relevant to present-day situation, as we also understood from the example of an e-commerce site. If you made it until here, you might be also interested to know the other cultural dimensions. You could find them here. See you there.